In another video I made, I spoke about creating a sustainable approach when it comes to gender equality, focusing on the group you want to help, but also concurrently focusing on the groups that will be displaced. When I say displaced, they might not like it. They might feel displaced. It's not actually displacement, but they might feel that way. And, part of that, and this is a really important but underrated skill, when it comes to any sort of pushback, although, and this is also, in many cases, sometimes my instinctive reaction is to say, no, this is for a good cause. Part of us has to listen. I don't necessarily like to always admit that, but it's true. Part of us has to listen. It doesn't mean everything that's said has to be taken on board, or, if all the men are saying they feel excluded and you're like, well, it's not the case. But the point is, we all have to be, in that sense, open to listening to hear what is being said, actively hearing, because the pushback might not always be relevant, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to it. It doesn't mean that pushback should change the course that you're going on, but only by listening to the reasons that people are pushing back can you actively combat those complaints. Because the whole picture is, you want to help women, but and I've seen this, company decides to help women, things start to go really well. A lot, or not even a lot, men, very powerful men in the company don't like it. All of a sudden, the women's initiative starts to take a back seat because it's not fair for. Whereas if there had potentially been a discussion around what are your concerns? Why do you feel this way? It's easier to combat and come against them and say, well, there's no reason to feel like this because of A, B, C, D, E. Here's the larger picture. This is what we're trying to do. Because if you avoid listening to the concerns, you end up creating a war zone almost in the background, which fundamentally will be driven by, if those who have power decide they want to not, or decide they don't want to do anything anymore because of this small group who have pushed back, it jeopardizes so much more for those who have already been marginalized and minoritized. So it's about listening. It's about creating. How do you respond to pushback? Is it something you seek to silence? And it also applies in the other direction, not just for those who feel displaced. It's also for those who are helping. Time and time again, you hear of the stories. There's an initiative that's been created, and when you kind of talk internally, you hear the whispers of, well, you know what? Only these 5 women have been helped, and they were on this career trajectory anyway. And when it's being raised to those in power, it's also being ignored, gaslit, put to the side. No, that's not what's happening. Are you taking pushback, feedback as seriously as you should be? Because within all of that, there is something to be learned. There is something to be taken out of it, which is, what can we do better? So I agree with creating women's initiatives. I agree with creating leadership development programs. But are you getting the feedback at the end? And are you also taking the negative feedback on board in order to grow, in order to do it better? It's not enough, and you can't put the burden on those who you're trying to help to say, well, we gave you something and it still wasn't good enough. Listen to the feedback. Listen to the feedback of those who say, well, you know what, seeing as you've decided to help women, seeing as you've decided to help black women, I don't feel like it's fair. Why don't they feel like it's fair? Work with that, understand the questions why. Because it's not always going to be the case that everybody's on board. But only by knowing what you're coming up against, only by knowing where you can do better, can you actually succeed in doing better. So, thank you very much for your time as always, and have a good day.